December is a popular month for decorating your home for the holidays. But have you thought about something for your front porch? I know it's the winter time, but great news. I have a recipe for creating great porch flair with a creative winter garden design. So let me show you the process from start to finish to wow your guests this holiday season. The first thing that you will need when creating a creative winter container garden design is obviously you'll need a container. Now there's certain materials that do better than others, so really think about what your material is made out of. This came from my home, and so it's a real hard plastic, so it'll hold up really well in the wintertime. You probably want to stay away from breakable containers that will break in the winter months that are cold, so try to stay away from terracotta material. Just to kind of show you here what it looks like, I've left my soil media in it because I actually use this particular container for some annuals in the summertime. So what I've done is I've just cleaned it up, but I've left the actual soil media in it. So the first thing that you want to do though is we're going to create our winter container garden design, but we want to first start with our mechanics. So what I've done is I've got some newspaper here, and it's a great way to recycle newspaper because after you get done reading, it's always readily available at your home. So what you're going to do first is just to kind of raise this up because we want to make sure when we create our container garden design it's up a little bit taller. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up our newspaper, just take a sheet, and then we're just going to add it to our container. So, and don't worry if it comes out of the container, that's perfectly fine. You can kind of tuck in your newspaper as you go. Now I'm going to do one more, kind of wad it up and put it right into the container. Okay, now that I've gotten my newspaper in my container, I am going to next look at some wet floral foam. And just to show you what this looks like in your particular type of floral department, it's going to make sure that it says wet floral foam. And whenever you buy it, it's going to be really dry in color. You can see how it's light green, but when you soak it, it's actually going to be dark green in color. So what you want to go ahead and do is go ahead and soak this in your sink. And you will do that by filling up your sink with water and just gently put this on top. Now when you put it on top, it's going to soak up like a sponge. You don't want to force it down into the water because it gets air bubbles that way. So what we're going to do is I've got 2 blocks because of my particular size of my container. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add this on top of the newspaper. And you can see it already worked that down. Okay. Now that we have our floral foam added, I'm going to show you how to tape down the sides. Now to secure your floral foam to the actual container that we're using, we're going to take some clear tape, and I am just going to tape this down. And I like to use clear, but if you have some green floral tape, that will work just fine as well. So. Okay, feel free to add more if you feel like you need to, but this is what it's going to look like right before we get ready to design our winter container garden. Now that we've gotten all our mechanics, what I've done first is with any container garden design that you have, there's always 3 parts to it. And so the first one we want to talk about is the thriller. And make sure I automatically go up and it's really, really pretty because you can see the other pieces when they get ready to be assembled. So I've taken a lantern and I've chosen black just because it's very neutral and it's really cool this time of year to add lanterns, a little bit of some light right to your front porch. And so we've added a flameless candle to it, and so that way you don't have to worry about anything burning outside, and we've added a festive ribbon to it. So this is what our thriller, and we're going to add in our next pieces of greenery to that. And for the next part, we're going to talk about cutting your greens. And so this part is probably the hardest part of the container garden design just because you have to go outdoors, but it's always fun to see what greens that you have in your garden and also in your landscape. So what I've done is I've taken some pine here. There's a lot of different pines here in Kentucky. You can see it's a nice pine. It's got a nice fragrance to it. I know you can't smell it there, but it's really, really pretty. And this is going to be our spiller of our arrangement. So you can see if you were to take an individual branch how it's going to cascade out of our container. So what you probably want to do after you've cut your greens is bring them indoors. If you want to do it right when you get ready to use it, that's great, but if you're doing it ahead of time, you probably want to soak it in at least a 5-gallon bucket filled full of water for at least 24 hours overnight. But if you want to do it as fresh as possible, do that as well. Now, to protect my hands, because when you're working with fresh greens from your garden or landscape, it's really important to protect your hands. And so garden gloves are great. You can see I've got some UK blue with our white for our wildcats. It makes great Christmas gifts. But what you're going to do is just put on your gloves that you have at home to protect from sap and things like that. And you're going to take a pair of pruners, and what you're going to do with that is you're just going to cut at a 45-degree angle. So now, we talked about the actual spilling out of the arrangement. So we're just going to tuck this into the floral foam. And you can see how it's going to be cascaded out of our arrangement. Now, I always like to start on the sides first just because it's easier for me to see where my empty spaces are at. So I'm going to go out here to the front and again cut your stem at a diagonal or a 45-degree, and you can let that cascade out of it. So these are fairly long pieces just because I really want to play up that effect with the particular spiller of the arrangement. So we went in the front. Now we're going to go over here to my left, add that in. And you might have some needles that fall out just because, you know, it's that time of year when we're having natural shedding of our pines. But don't worry, you can always take that out. You can see here how I've had to actually take off some needles at the bottom just so I have a nice clear way. And so I'm going to add this one right here in between the front and the side. And again, I'm going to add some more greens until I have a nice continuation all the way around. Now you can see after we've added all our pine all the way around, basically we're just adding it around the base of our winter container garden design. So next you can add a different type of green. It's one of my favorites here. It's the southern magnolia. And you talk about southern hospitality when you see southern magnolia. You probably, before you get ready to cut, ask whoever you know that has one of these in their garden or landscape, because sometimes they're very particular about cutting on this one. So I have a really good friend that I can go cut from. But you can see we have some nice contrast here with a real high gloss type leaf on top, and then even on the undersides we have a really pretty contrast here with some velvety brown colors. So this is going to be really, really pretty, and you can see it's going to provide a nice look to our pines that's going to be spilling out. Basically what our southern magnolia here is going to do for us, it's going to serve as that third winter part as the filler. So what we're going to do here is just add this in. Again, you're kind of framing your lantern, and you want to be able to see it whenever you add in some of your other stems. So southern magnolia is really easy to work with. You don't really necessarily have to have some gloves to protect yourself, but I'm going to start here in the back first. And again, we're just kind of framing our lantern again with some of our southern magnolia leaves. And you can always take off some leaves. You know, in nature, there's not a beautiful, always specimen of that. So feel free to take that off as you need it. I'm going to add this one over here on the side. And it looks like I'm going to have to cut it a little bit more. So, okay, just going to add that slowly in there. Okay. Basically, I'm going to continue on with adding our southern magnolia. Now you can see how our magnolia is added to our creative winter container garden design and how we basically just put it right around the pine. And again, this is our thriller, but our magnolia here is serving as our filler. We're just going to basically hide all the mechanics of our arrangement. Now, the next thing I want to add, just for a little bit of pop of color, is we've got some red nandina berries here. And you can see how pretty and bright that is for your actual container garden design. So what you want to do is, because these have nice clusters of berries on them, we're just going to add it around with our magnolia here to kind of break up some of that. So I'm going to start right here in the front and add that. And again, these are the heavenly bamboo, so if you have some of it in your garden or landscape, you can add that in and it's really, really pretty. Remember that odd numbers are more eye appealing to the eye than some of the even numbers. So I'm going to add one more cluster of berries to the other side, and then we're going to show how you can even add some pine cones. Feel free, after you've added some nandina berries, to put in some seasonal items like pine cones. Pine cones are easily to achieve just because if you've got pine, you've got pine cones. So we're just going to add this strategically in. Again, we probably want to use some floral wire to attach it, just to beautify it and make sure it's fully attached, but add it to the back, even on the sides. So, and there you have it, guys. Very simple, very beautiful, and it's something, again, that you can go outdoors, get live greenery, and then just add it around some of those containers that were on your porch and you didn't know exactly what to do with it. So this is going to be very beautiful. It's going to provide some beautification to the front porch, and as well as some wonderful fragrance. So if you have any questions, maybe on greens of what to cut for your winter container garden design, or maybe how to assemble, just give us a call at the extension office and we'd be glad to help. And lastly, Merry Christmas.